This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Elster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. Today, the main part of our podcast is going to be an interview I did with Tawny Newsome, who is awesome. Newsome is awesome. This just in. But first, we're going to go through some news, and the first bit of news is that we are about to get some news about Star Trek Discovery, thanks to Comic-Con in Brazil, right?
Yeah, it's called CCXP, and I have no idea what that stands for, but it's the biggest thing, happening in Latin America. And I think it's more significant in that, this is the first kind of major event since both strikes ended. New York Comic Con, which you went to, wasn't that because one of the two strikes was still happening. So Paramount Plus is doing a panel for multiple shows this Saturday, which is the day after this podcast. And one of the shows is Discovery, and Michelle Paradise is going to be there, and who's co-showrunner, and Sonequa.
Yeah, Sonequa's going to be there too. And Michelle Paradise posted something on social today about surprises was the word she used.
Yeah, and the press release we got teased. I mean, they weren't specific about which of the shows because they're doing Halo and some other shows, but they promised exclusive first looks and stuff. I think for Discovery, we should expect a date. I mean, it would be insane for them not to put it, this is enough. It's time for them to set a release date, right?
Enough already. We need to know when it's coming. First of all, we have podcasting to plan.
Exactly. But I think we will get the final trailer or the second trailer. The first trailer was 13 months ago. So it's time. They did a clip at Comic-Con in July, so we'll probably get another trailer, is my guess.
I was going to say, then they re-released the same trailer, so we are definitely hankering for something new.
And, and maybe we'll get some, news announcements about the season. It's not a Star Trek Universe panel, so I wouldn't expect them to say anything else. Like Michelle Paradise doesn't work on the other shows.
Right, nor does Sonequa.
It's possible they could say something about Section 31. It's funny, the Variety article about this used a picture of Michelle Yeoh, even though she has nothing to do with the show anymore, Discovery. But she's an Academy Award winner in their Variety. So they're like, oh, let's use that one.
Right. And she was on the show.
Yeah, for sure. Now, we do have a little bit of an update. Okay, so first of all, on Saturday, we will have reporting on this. Not only will we have, Paramount will send out any press releases to us if there's like a trailer or whatever, they're announcing, but we're going to be partnering with a Brazil site. So we will have reporting on the panel and all that, thanks to our friends in Brazil.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you didn't have to fly to Brazil.
Well, I mean, I think it'd be pretty cool to go to Brazil, but
that's true, especially for like Comic-Con.
Yeah. So my Portuguese is a bit rusty.
Well, you'd pick up on all the important words. Like Star Trek.
Well, that's not what they call it there, though.
Can you say it in Portuguese?
No, I was just about to try. I could say it in Spanish, but I'm just gonna move on. Okay, so one thing that we could get some news on, but I don't think it'll be mentioned, is Michelle Yeoh's Section 31 movie. Last podcast, which was 2 weeks ago, we talked about how there's indication they are gearing up. Now the Canadian Directors Guild has put it on their shooting, production list schedule, which isn't always accurate, but it looks like they are going to start shooting in January through March. So that's the latest we have on that one.
Yeah, through mid-March. And I was looking at the list of crew, and I saw like Timothy Peel, whose name is familiar to us from working on Picard, I believe. So it's definitely that group.
Yeah. I mean, it's, there's no counter indications. This is, it was supposed to shoot in the fall of this year. We know Michelle Yeoh is very motivated to make this happen. So they'll be done shooting this before season 3 of Strange New Worlds. So I think, on the last podcast, the question is, which comes first, the Section 31 movie or season 3 of Strange New Worlds on Paramount Plus? Hard to say, really.
Yeah.
I think finishing all the post on Strange New Worlds would be, because that's going to shoot through till May, and, that will definitely take longer. but they could probably get the first half of the season out before. So who knows? Anyway, but I think they're gonna squeeze some live action Star Trek in the latter half of the year. So Discovery will be early in the year,
Right.
then we'll have the live action gap. In there, we'll get Prodigy on Netflix and probably Lower Deck season 5.
It would be interesting if they do end up splitting Strange New Worlds into 2 and then put the Section 31 movie in between. That would be an interesting choice.
What we don't know is, are there any connections between the two of them? That might be. I wouldn't be surprised if there were. We don't know really where Georgiou went with her friend Carl.
No, and she could still be hanging with him and therefore going wherever and whenever she wants, or somebody wants, or Carl wants.
But if she goes back to where she started, it would be within the time zone of Strange New Worlds.
Right.
Well, actually, a little bit. It'd be before season 1 of Strange New Worlds, but there'd be no reason why she couldn't show up in season 3.
Yeah.
Or at least there'd be storyline connections. I think that might be kind of cool if they work that out.
Yeah, I agree.
But it wouldn't be as smart as, I mean, what you're almost implying, which there's no way this is that episode 5 of Strange New World season 3 like ends on a little cliffhanger that is picked up on in the Section 31 movie. Because they were never planned to be that, tied together.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't implying that personally, but it's in the possibilities are somewhat intriguing, but I do think that's unlikely because they've been working on them separately, I think, for quite some time.
Now, there's another officially announced Star Trek project that we've been waiting for news on, and we got a little bit of an update on, and that's the Star Trek : Con - SETI Alpha 5. Nick Meyer, originally TV miniseries, now podcast.
Yeah. So he talked to Larry Nemeczek in Portal 47, which the full video is up for people who want to go watch it. He says it's now a radio play, more or less, it's a podcast, but he's calling it a radio play with 9 or 10 episodes. Originally it was a 3-part miniseries. He's still hoping that it will find its way on screen at some point.
Yeah, I think that's his vision, but Paramount decided that they want to make this. I mean, this will be the first scripted dramatization. I mean, podcast he doesn't like to use the word podcast, and I kind of agree, because you're listening to a podcast now, but scripted drama podcasting is a kind of a big growing segment, and there are other scripted drama podcasts out there.
Right. I mean, it's only called podcast because of how it's distributed, but it is a radio. I mean, it's what radio used to be. Yeah. You used to find this stuff on the radio.
I mean, we don't even know if it would be distributed using normal podcasting or whether it'd be restricted as an exclusive within the app, which is what Warner Brothers did with the Batman scripted podcast with Brent Spiner playing the Joker. Or whether it would just be out there, like some of the other ones. Or maybe they do an exclusive deal with Audible. There's a lot of Audible only drama podcasts with big name stars.
Right.
Zachary Quinto has one playing.
Oh, no, John Hamm. They got everything. I mean, they've had a tremendous amount of very famous big names in there doing dramas.
So Nick, he really was reticent to talk more about this, except to indicate that its project is still happening. He implied there's too many cooks in the kitchen and the strikes delayed it, and he didn't want to talk about casting or production details, but he did talk about the whole notion. He called it doing it as a radio play is perfect. Or radio plays are perfect because it's the theater of your mind's imagination at work instead of being limited by budgets. So he's excited about it, but I don't know why this thing is taking so long. The strikes really shouldn't have had it. The podcasts don't fall under the struck work contracts anyway, I don't think. So,
Right. But again, maybe you get into that thing of certain people just being like, yeah, but I'm not going to do work during this time.
Any work. Yeah.
Right.
Even if
Like
it's
some
not.
of the animation people decided that too. So
That's
it's
true.
a tough one. But I think his phrase, a kitchen filled with cooks, is very telling, which just means a lot of meetings, a lot of people involved in conversations that definitely would slow down progress.
I mean, I love Nicholas Meyer. I love audio productions. I think one of the issues with this con idea is that if you think about everything in Star Trek, you need kind of heroes, and this is about a bunch of evil, genetically modified supermen who are in exile. Who are the good guys? Do they introduce more Starfleet people? Is there a framing story with a Starfleet ship involved? It is a bit of a challenge, I think, to do this story.
Yeah, but I feel like if someone's going to do it, get a creative dude like Nicholas Meyer.
Indeed.
Yeah. And we don't know how this fits into, because the rules of canon are usually what's seen on screen. This falls into an interesting gap. So we don't really know if it will be considered canon. As soon as, one of the shows mentions something that happened, it is canon. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Especially because the Khan Noonien Singh canon has been updated.
Yep.
Recently. Khan was moved into the 21st century and into Toronto. So
into my hometown.
So Nick's original script written years ago was probably still thinking, in the old days when it was in the 1990s.
Right. I mean, not that matters at this point, considering the time period he's interested in.
Yeah, but if you're sitting around SETI Alpha 5 talking about the old days, you want to make sure that the timeline is matching up.
Sure.
With what's on the TV shows, probably the new TV shows.
When they're sitting around the campfire reminiscing.
Yeah. About the good old days during the eugenics wars.
Yeah, that was so fun.
Yeah. But do they talk about Sung, right? Like Sung is a character now.
Right.
And that kind of thing. At least now they can make sure that happens. So, yeah, I'm totally looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
I've been looking forward ever since 2017 when I was talking to Nick Meyer and he first dropped a hint that he was working on this in an interview I did with him. So this is, we've been waiting for this for a long time, which is maybe why I sound a little jaded about it at this point.
Well, we'll get to something you can be jaded about in a bit. But before we get to that, let's talk about Picard. It's Picard, but it's this legacy idea again. Basically, Michelle Hurd did an interview and she was talking about how working with Michael Dorn was such a gift. She said they had so much chemistry that the writers and producers, saw it and took note and found ways to use it. And then she just talked about how it would be really great to see that Worf and Raffi story told and that they need to be back on screen and that Seven needs to be with them, is what she said. Now, this is Michelle Hurd talking about what she wants to have happen. This is not Alex Kurtzman announcing a project.
Right. The interesting thing is, so this was a kind of post-finale interview with her in the new magazine. But during the whole interview, she kept on talking about Michael and the Worf dynamic. And the question about where she talked about how she wants to see more Worf and Raffi together was actually about would she be interested in doing a spin-off show, including a show with Seven. So when she mentioned Seven in her answer, it was almost like, oh, yeah, and she could come along, too. She wasn't asked about Michael in a spin-off. She brought it up. She's like, if we do a spin-off, I want to be teamed up with Michael Dorn again. That's how much she loved it. And we know some of the other actors have talked about wanting to do more. We don't know about Michael Dorn. We know he doesn't like the makeup, even though they've shortened it and stuff like that. But I bet he could be talked into it.
They did have great chemistry. The two characters are perfect to pair up because they're so different.
Right. And I think one of her points was that they help the diversity representation of Star Trek. And that's she used the word it's necessary to show people characters like this in the future. And, this issue comes up in your interview with Tawny. I think she had some real interesting things to say about representation in Star Trek and Deep Space Nine.
Yep.
I think that is an important point, but legacy's not happening. It might happen, but this is all just kind of fun to talk about. But until, Paramount gets more flush with money and starts greenlighting more and more shows again, I don't know. I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole when we don't know whether any spinoff is going to happen. I think the most likely thing is they'll offer Terry something like another backdoor pilot, and my bet is he would say no. He wants a show, but maybe he'd go for it.
I think it just makes me realize there are so many stories within stories that can be told. There's so many options. It doesn't have to be, this one legacy show with Ed Spaliers. There are lots of options, and that's one of the options. And this is something else. And there are ways to incorporate each of the characters doing different things, but there's no one path, if there's a path at all.
The frustrating thing is that if you want a live action show and you want to have legacy characters in it, it has to be set in the early 25th century. And they are doing live action in the 32nd century. And I'm sure there's ways they could squeeze some legacy characters into the Academy show. There's always holograms. But really, there's this great asset that they have of all of these legacy characters that they could use. And there's no vehicle for them to use them, nor does it seem there's plans to have such a vehicle now that Picard is over. So
right.
I'm all for Star Trek Legacy. We supported the idea since the beginning. So again, I maybe sound a little jaded, but I think this is more just being realistic about what's going on with Paramount. Is that I don't think we'll see the 25th century until 2026, if then.
Right. Well, I feel like the appetite will be sustained.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
All right. Well, speaking of things that might never happen, we have another. Chris Pine's been doing, promotion for Wish, an animated movie where he does a voice. And of course, people ask him about Star Trek, and someone asked him, do you think Paramount's moving away from the Kelvin universe for something else? And his answer was, not that I know of.
Well, I think he would know.
Yes.
If this is this is the weird, like, Schrodinger's cat of this movie. Like, does it exist or not? And it kind of does and does not, because the funny thing is he then says, when asked if he's seen a script for this thing, he said, of course not. Right. He's now jaded, speaking of jaded, because he's been complaining about not seeing a script. But again, they don't want to show him a script because it sounds like they've gone through multiple scripts, competing ideas. And the last thing they want to do is have an actor fall in love with one version of something that's may not be what the final thing is. So they don't want to show them anything until they've made the decision. The last we heard is they're fine tuning some script, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. I've always said that Paramount will make another Star Trek movie when they decide what Star Trek movie they want to make. They don't want to stop making Star Trek movies because they have made them a lot of money over the centuries, but they just can't seem to decide. And I'm no longer predicting whether it's going to be a Kelvin movie or not. It was the leading contender, and then it wasn't, and then it was again, and then it wasn't. And I don't know what it is this week.
Yeah, if I had to, wager on it, I would say it's not going to be that. It's too much time, honestly. It's a lot of time, and they're already successful with other Star Treks, and they know that it doesn't have to be that.
But apparently, when Brian Robbins took over as CEO, and when they killed the Noah Hawley project, which is going to be new ship, new crew, new everything, they had done some focus groups. And those focus groups told them we want to see more of the Kelvin crew. So that's why they went back to the Kelvin crew. They agreed to pay Chris Pine what he wanted, which was apparently a lot. And they have a good working relationship with him. He did the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and they've done a bunch of stuff with him. Half of it is on the creative side and half of it's on the money side to make it worth it. Like, does the movie only work if it makes $700 million, which is hard to do? Anyway, this is.
I was like, we've had this conversation so many times.
I know.
Every time there's a dribble of news, whether it's news that something is happening or news that something isn't or news that somebody doesn't know, we have this conversation. So, and it's probably the same conversation lots of people are having out there.
This is the Jaded podcast.
Yes, it is.
Which is different than our main focus, which will be Tawny Newsome. But before we get to that, there's just a couple kind of cool merch things to say. We did an article on the site about something called Fanfare, which is a new way to get celebrity autographs. And it's kind of cool. What it is it's using technology for celebrities to sign things, but they never actually signed the thing. It gets printed. So they signed a thing on an app, and then it gets printed on these nice original artwork posters. So you could, send your friend a happy birthday message from Tim Russ or John Delancey, and they'll write, whatever you say for them to write, but they didn't touch the poster. It was printed at a printing press somewhere.
Right. They're digitally signing it, but it is an original message, personalized, and they're handwriting it, but they didn't, for people who, for some people, an autograph is about having physically touched the object, which they're not doing. But if it's really just about getting a message from somebody, it kind of opens up the options for how to make that happen without standing in line at a convention, for example. And they've signed up a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, Frakes is doing it. It's a bunch of Star Trek people. It's actually John Delancey's son, his company. So I guess he was the first to sign up, and he helped talk in some other people.
Right. It's his son, Owen, but not Keegan, who was on Voyager, just so people know. It's not the same one.
There is a convenience factor, as you say. If you want something signed by one, it's kind of like Cameo, where you go to the site, you type in what you want them to say, and instead of them sending you a video message, you get a poster with the thing with your message written on it, and it'll be much faster, of course, than waiting for the next convention and flying to Las Vegas or wherever. But you don't get that experience, and so it's something different, but interesting,
right?
I think we may be bringing in John Delancey onto this podcast sometime in the future, and maybe he'll explain it better.
Yes, I'm sure he will. He'll snap his fingers, and it will all become clear.
And there's a company we've mentioned before called Vice Prints, and if still talking about posters and art prints, and they've been doing replicas and some new art for Star Trek movie posters, and now they've started doing TV show stuff. So the really cool season finale poster of Picard, which you could only get if you went to one of like the very limited IMAX screenings. They have a really nice version of that, and all 4 of the Lower Decks posters, art prints, which have never been released as posters.
That's cool. Those posters are great.
You could get like a Star Trek 4 poster from them and a Lower Decks season 4 poster from them. And they're kind of the same poster, but in a different way. But this is limited time. They go on sale Thursday, the day we're recording this podcast. So by the time you get it, I don't know, they might be gone by then. So hopefully not.
Right.
I think, let's pivot and talk about your interview with Tawny Newsome. We've teased bits of this on the site, but there's more to the interview that hasn't been on the site. But she confirmed that they're recording for season 5, which is big, and we listened for her talking about Starfleet Academy, which was kind of cool. That she's a writer, and she gave you some insight into that writer's room.
Yeah, she's so excited about it too. I mean, she's excited about everything. She was absolutely a joy to talk to. And you just start having a conversation with her without, you kind of lose the interviewee feeling of some of it and just fall into conversation. But yeah, it was, she's so excited to be in that writer's room. I mean, she says it herself, so I'm not going to paraphrase, but she does fill in some cool information.
Yeah, and especially because we know almost nothing about that show. So
she certainly made me feel like I now am more excited about it.
And about season 5. So let's play it.
It's so nice to meet you, Tawny. I'm such a fan, and I love the show, and I love you on it.
Oh, thank you. I think we met on the line at maybe at Picard or at some premiere or something. No?
I'm New York, so if there was, I'm never at the LA things.
Oh, all right.
So,
Well, nice to
I'm,
meet you.
it's awesome that you think so. So I'll take it. Um, so I got questions from all over. So, Lower Deck
Okay.
season 4, Mariner's origin story, like her whole arc, was tied to the whole origin of the actual series.
Yeah.
So, had you known about that for a long time, or was that something that you just found out?
No, so I knew about it in kind of a vague way. Mike McMahon told me, time is so, first of all, time is fake. It doesn't exist. But also in animation, things come out so much farther ahead than when they, whatever. So I don't know when this was, but I think Mike told me back when we were working on season 3, he said, my long game plan is I'm going to tie our show to the original Lower Decks episode of TNG, and I'm going to make Mariner friends with Cedo, the Bajoran ensign who died. And like that was all I knew. And I was like, holy shit, this is genius. This is so perfect, especially for you, Mike, because that's his favorite episode of Trek ever. So I was like, this all makes total sense. I love it. I did not know about the Locarno of it all until I read the season 4 scripts. And I think that's when I kind of geeked out because, like, first of all, I love that episode, The First Duty. I love it so much. I also love that we did, like, the Lower Decks version of Khan. Like, we took a character from one episode where you're like, wait, that guy? And then brought him back and made him this epic villain. I just think it's such a funny example of what our show does best. And yeah, how to just be the weirdest iteration of a Star Trek show possible. Yeah, so I loved it.
And so, do you have a favorite deep cut or reference from the past season?
Um, a favorite deep cutter reference. This isn't a deep cutter reference, but I have been wanting to talk about this and I keep forgetting. So on the picket lines this summer, early on in the WGA strike, I was introduced to a man named Mark Gaberman who wrote the story, not the teleplay, but he wrote the story for Tuvix. It was his first ever writing job, and I met him on the picket line. I was like, oh my god, you wrote Tuvix? Wait till you see our season 4 opener. And we got to be friends. Like, we would run into each other picketing all the time. And when that episode came out, he sent me this long message. He was just so touched. He was like, I can't believe something that I came up with has influenced canon in this way and is still being talked about 30 years later. For that to be his first job, and now he's got this very cool career. He writes for Jeopardy now. I just think that, like, that brought him such joy and made him feel so valuable in the franchise. And I just love that our little show can do that for people. And that made me so happy.
Yeah, it's been great at bringing back just moments, like the exercising moment with the, stuff like that to just have resurface in some way is so much fun.
Oh, absolutely. The unitards for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so are you recording? I know you're working on season 5. First of all, have you started recording for that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We were recording a tiny bit before the strike, and then we just got started again, and we're like somewhere in the middle. I've done like 4 or 5 episodes so far. So yeah, I think our production timeline is okay. I don't know how that got affected, but we're back, and yeah, I love it. I'm so happy to be back doing these roles.
And do you get to record with other people, or are you still doing stuff on your own?
No, we never, actually our first session back, our producer Brad Winters didn't tell us, but he scheduled me and Jack not only back to back, but he scheduled us to overlap. So I showed up to record at 1, and really I wasn't recording till 2, and Jack was in there finishing, and we were like, oh, my friend! I mean, we see each other all the time, but it was still just like to see each other at work. It just felt like such a joy. And then I think we did, don't tell the studio, but I think we did waste about 90 minutes in there just like catching up and gossiping and eating salads. But maybe they scheduled in some intentional buffer time.
I'm going to guess they did. Buffer time's famous already, so why not?
Why not?
So would you rather record solo, or would you rather have the people around to do it with you?
Look, I'm going to be honest. We get way less done the more people that are in there because we are all just good friends and we like chit chat and gossip so much. So I'm sure it is more productive to have us in there one at a time. But yeah, no, I mean, I love I love whenever Jack's in there. I take so many little videos that I can then never post anywhere because everything is so spoilery. But I have so many cute little videos of him just like making noises and doing weird shit in the booth. So I would like more opportunities to take creepy videos of my friends, but I don't think that's how you make a good Star Trek show.
Right. Well, you could release them after anyway.
I know, and then I always forget. Then it's like a year and a half later. Like I have so many pictures from the crossover episode and like videos and stuff that I do need to post, but it's like now I'm like busy and I don't know. It just is not how my brain works when it comes to posting things. But I will put them out because the world does need to see Jack Quaid in a turbo lift, just doing like elevator bits.
Totally. And we have a never-ending appetite for. We don't care how old the stuff is. We're like, bring it.
That's a good point. That's a good reminder, Laurie.
50 years old. We're like, yes, bring on the outtakes.
So yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
This fandom loves to recycle a moment, so you're absolutely right.
Oh yeah, and stuff will resurface after like years of nobody seeing it. So
yeah.
So speaking of the crossover, you finally got to be Mariner, but this time actually interacting physically with a whole bunch of people. So did that change your performance in any way? And also, did you have to slow down a lot?
We made some jokes about that we added that to the text of the episode because we were like, we had like a little meeting like with Frakes and with the writers ahead of time. And Frakes asked me, he was like, do you change your voices for the animated show? And I was like, no, we just yell and we talk fast and it's just how animation works. Like you don't have your face and body to emote with. So you have to do so much more. There's just so much more energy and effort that has to go into your voice. So it's true. Like the fandom that was angry at us early on that was like, they just yell all the time. We were like, yeah, you're correct. What's your next problem? Because you're absolutely right. We do yell all the time. That's what animation is. So we were like, well, we have to have like a nod to that because what I don't want to do is come on to Strange New Worlds where everyone's like a very restrained, incredible on-camera actor who kind of talks in like a very hushed moment. I don't want to be on there like screaming in Una's face. That's just not the look I want. So we made a little joke about it. And other than that, like our physicality, we did mute a little bit just because like we are not cartoons. But a lot of it was, we tried to stay pretty faithful. The one thing I couldn't do that I was really bummed about, Mariner crosses her arms all the time, and I couldn't do it in that costume because of where they placed our lav microphone. It made it muffled. So I didn't get to do any good Mariner arm crosses.
Well, so speaking of fans that get mad at things,
yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah. So what do you say to fans, or not what do you say to them, but what do you think when you hear that fans are like dismissing all the Easter eggs and deep cuts as just fan service?
Oh, like dismissing Easter eggs?
Yeah, like there are people who say it's just that they're like, I mean, I don't agree with them because I fucking love the show, but they're like, it's just a pile on and they're just stuffing it, whatever their thing is.
Oh my gosh, I'm glad I haven't seen those people. They sound very sad. They sound like they have a hard time enjoying things in life because, I don't think that you should just have I think that our show does a good job of also telling great stories and honoring Star Trek canon and being really funny and having incredible character moments. So the fact that we also managed to shove in so many references and like deep cuts, I just think that's a testament to the writing because the show wouldn't be good if it was just fan service. Like we wouldn't have 4 seasons. You can't do 4 seasons of just fan service. Like the studio or somebody would have been like, okay, that's enough after like 10 episodes, So I kind of just don't think those criticisms are at all even valid because it wouldn't be as popular as it is. So I don't know. I hope they find joy in their life. Is what I would say to them.
It is a little sad.
Yeah.
So you've played with some of the you've had scenes with, whether you get to record with them or not, I guess you don't, like Jonathan Frakes and Robbie McNeil and John Delancey and Armin and Nana and all these people. So is there someone else on your bucket list that you would love to have scenes with your character in particular?
Oh man. I mean, I think fans heard about me gently yelling at Mike McMahon when he almost didn't put Mariner on Deep Space Nine at all.
Yeah.
he had her on that side plot in her damn candle party, and I was so mad. I was like, if you don't let me, Tawny Newsome, talk to Nana and Armin in some point in this damn cartoon, I'm going to haunt you for the rest of your life. So he fixed that because I'm a huge Major Kira stan. I'm also a huge Jedzia Dax stan. I don't know how we do that. There's got to be some timey-wimey shenanigans. That would be, yeah, anyone from Deep Space Nine would be such an incredible honor that it would, yeah, it would blow my mind to get to talk to any of those people. Some are more difficult to achieve than others based on who is canonically alive in 2381. But
Well, there's always a way.
there's always a way, right?
Yeah, we just have Speedo and Wesley, so we can have anyone.
Yeah, come on. All right, we'll work on that.
So you're also in the writer's room on the Starfleet Academy show, which is awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Are you guys back up and running?
We are, yeah. It's been, whenever the strike ended, so it's been about a month, and it's been great. Yeah.
It's going well?
It's going great. I'm so careful. You're going to hear me really choose my words, Laurie, because, you know, I keep saying as I've been doing press, I'm like, you know, as an actor, if I slip up and say the wrong thing, like, somebody might call me and like slap my hand or whatever, but as a writer, I think I could get in serious trouble if I mess this up. So I'm like, let me be very careful. We are back. We have truly the most fun group of people, just the loveliest people. Our showrunners, Alex and Noga, really assembled just a delightful room of lovely people. I don't know how they did it because Hollywood's full of psychopaths, and they really managed to find some sweeties who love Trek. So I've been having a blast, and I think that the audience is going to love this show. I really do.
Alex has talked about how it's aimed at a new generation of fans, which makes a lot of sense. How do you feel that it'll work with like the old school, not the grumpy ones, but the old school fans?
Okay, if Alex has said those words, then I can piggyback on things Alex has already said. So yes, it is aimed at a younger generation. I mean, you know, it's the Academy. It's all things are possible. Also, I like this era, just speaking as me, I like the promise of this show because so often we don't get to see what it's like when you're not quite a fully formed Starfleet officer yet. Like all of our Starfleet officers have to be so good already. And what I think has been so fun about Lower Decks is that we've gotten to see like, you know, the people on the less great ship. And so, yeah, I just think that kids in their academy phase, yeah, that's some of the exciting stuff for me is like, what are you like when you're a teenager who's still figuring this out on the path to becoming these great Starfleet officers?
And I mean, you're a true Star Trek fan, and obviously it's appealing to you. So you think that people will be able to connect with it even if they're, you know, oldies like us?
I do. I will say that there are some people in that room, I might be one of them, that are real cannon hound dogs. We got some real cannon heads in there being like really, you know, very, very intense, intense conversations about keeping the Star Trek of it feeling really Star Trek-y. So I hope that'll make everyone who loves Star Trek happy because, you know, it makes me happy. I love being a deputy cannon cop.
I feel like that's a good barometer for the rest of us. Like if you're into it and you're part of it.
So also though, it's so early. That's the other reason that I'm being careful because I'm like, anything I say now, I could tell you like, oh yeah, there's a circus episode and 20 monkeys come and like overtake Andoria. And then that won't happen because, you know, the show's going to premiere in 2048 or whatever the hell. So that's the other wild thing is that like, oh, when you're in the writer's room, it's not like being an actor where I've seen the scripts and I'm just like trying not to spoil things. In the writer's room, it's like things are mercurial. Things change every day. I come into the room and I'm like, wait, I thought we were doing X. Oh, it's different now? Great. So yeah, I don't want to make any promises that I just cannot keep.
Is this your first writer's room, like of this type?
Of this type, for sure. I have done sketch before. I have never done a narrative room. I worked at the Second City for many years before I worked in TV, and we write all of our own material there. I've done a lot of little like, okay, we're assembling a punch-up room for this draft of this thing, and yeah, but I've only ever worked in comedy. I've never worked on an hour-long drama, not even as an actor. So that's different for me. And yeah, and then someone told me that I'm the first like Star Trek cast member to be on the staff of a show.
You are.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, some have written episodes, but
Yeah, like freelance, right?
right.
Yeah.
Or like probably it's more of a story idea,
Uh-huh.
but I think you're the first one. And
I
so
wear
you're
that.
enjoying the vibe of that?
Yeah, for sure. And I wear that honor. So yeah, it was weird when I heard that. I was like, it was during the strike, and I was like, I don't know if I can confirm that, or I don't even know how to like figure that out. But yeah, that's such an honor, and I'm going to be thinking about that. It's rare that you get to be a first in something that you really care about.
Yeah.
That's very meaningful to me.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Back to Lower Decks. So there's
Yeah.
been like some talk of like, will the show, like every show, because everything's, especially like Paramount, things are up in the air with all the shows and how long will they last and all of that. How long could you see, I mean, besides just wanting to stay on Lower Decks forever, like realistically, how long do you see that show going?
I think the show can go as long as Mike has interesting, beautiful stories to tell about these characters. And I think we've seen that he's managed to really get a lot of mileage out of us. Like, I think he's really found ways to deepen their backstory. I mean, look at Tendi. Look at where, the jokes about Tendi from season 1 in the fandom were like, we don't know anything about her, to the point where in season 2, we have Mariner making a joke where she's like, what's your first name? Devana? Like, and now we have all of this. I mean, Tendi has such an incredible story, and we're going to see more of it in season 5. We're going to see more cool Orion stuff. The way we're adding to Orion canon in our show, more than almost any other Trek show has done. So I really see a world where we could go on and on and on and not run out of stuff to talk about. It's just a question of, does Mike want to keep doing it? I know we all do. I know Jack and I are like, yeah, we'll do this forever. Why wouldn't we? I really want to see us in more live action. I want to get to see Tendi and Rutherford. I've been doing comedy on stage, like live comedy with Eugene Cordero for years. He's one of my dear friends, and I'm like, we need to be in a live action Trek together. So that's what I'm pulling for.
And do you think if the show went on, like you'd need to get bigger promotion? Like how long can you stay Lower Deckers?
Well, I think we'd have to stretch the meaning of a lower decker. I think it'd turn into a lot of like, we're lower deckers at heart, even though we're all fleet admirals or whatever, because at a certain point, they gotta rank up. But I don't know, maybe some of them will leave Starfleet. I don't know. I don't think that the show hinges on their actual rank. I think we've proved that like,
yeah,
their friendship and the types of things they want to focus on is more the story,
And you can still feel like one no matter what your rank is. You can still feel like a lower decker.
I'm a grown-ass woman. I feel like a lower decker every day.
Same. So, and Moopsie totally blew up into a thing. Like fans are making their own Moopsies and everybody's obsessed with Moopsie. T'Lyn really blew up. Like when you're going through scripts, have you spotted any of these things that you thought, like were you surprised by how big some of these things were?
No, I don't predict stuff like that because I'm always wrong. Even in like live action stuff I've done, I remember turning to a castmate on a live action show and being like, I'm not even going to say what it was, but we were in particular outfits that were just like cool outfits. But we thought that not only was this show and these characters, we thought this was going to blow up. I mean, it wasn't just us. We were being told by people in charge, like, this is about to be huge. Your lives are going to change. Get your addresses off the internet. You're going to be stalked. You're going to be A-listers, blah, blah. And then I remember turning to my castmate and being like, you think these costumes we're wearing are going to be like everyone's Halloween costume this year? And my castmate was like, yeah, I think so. We're about to be so famous. And then it was just like such a dud. Like nothing happened. No one watched it. Nothing. So I don't ever predict that shit. And I absolutely love when the fandom loses their mind and goes totally apeshit for something like Moopsie, because you're just like, wait, what? You know that like marketing and merchandising departments all over the world for franchises everywhere are trying so hard to get whatever that is, and you just can't predict it. Our fandom just went, Moopsie. It's Moopsie. It's going to trend for 5 days straight. It was trending on Twitter. people I didn't even know were like talking to me about that episode. I was like, this is delightful. It just exploded. I love our fans.
So I know you're such a big Star Trek fan, especially Deep Space Nine, but what are the gaps in your like viewing? Are there things you haven't seen yet? Have you made your way through everything? I mean, it's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff. I never watched I've seen some of the animated series, the original animated series. I know I've seen every original series episode, but I have not rewatched them. So there's some that I've like rewatched a bunch of times, but like there's plenty that I'm just like, wait, what happened? And I'm not as versed on Voyager. I did a rewatch in college, I think, and that was the last time I saw it. So definitely like at the top of my brain are Deep Space Nine, TNG, and then the new stuff. But yeah, I have gaps like everybody else, but also just being in the franchise in so many different ways, I'm just having so many conversations with people about it that even if I haven't seen that particular Voyager episode recently, I've been talking about it a lot. So I also have weird kind of like phantom fandom about shit where I'm like, did I watch that or did someone just describe it to me over and over again?
I bet that happens to you a lot.
It really does. Yeah, I'll tell people like, oh yeah, I've seen that. And then really no, I've just like heard about it or had it, summarized for me so many times. And then I'll watch the episode and I'm like, wait, what is this? Yeah, so it's confusing, but I'm steeped in it in a lot of different ways.
Right. And you're a big Deep Space Nine fan, so you've seen that more than once all the way through?
I've seen that multiple times. I've seen every episode multiple times.
And what is it about Deep Space Nine that you love so much?
I mean, I think that when I was very young and starting to watch it, I know that my dad was very excited to see a black captain. And my dad was very excited to have a show about a black family that was not about trauma, that was not about racial trauma, that was not, it was something he could watch with his very young daughter. And it was just space shit. It was sci-fi and they happened to be black. And then of course we get those incredible episodes that do deal with race, but it was something that my dad could show his kid and, not have it be about slavery or about, some black person in the 50s who had to overcome some hardship, which those stories are important, but you just get tired as a person of color in this country. You get tired of those things and you just want wish fulfillment. In addition to that, I always was obsessed with Jadzia Dax. I was obsessed with that relationship that she has with Ben Sisko, where you can have a friendship that transcends all these different generations of hosts, that transcends gender. You have this like a woman who presents one way, being called old man. I just felt like the way that they played with gender was like so mind blowing to me as like a young teen. And honestly, as a comedian, like those Ferengi episodes, some of those Ferengi episodes they are such bangers. Like they're such comedy bangers. To have like Andrea Martin and Wallace Shawn just doing full flat out sitcoms, just hard comedy. Like it might as well have been a half-hour sitcom with like an audience out front. And then the next episode is like the absolute brutalities of war. that tonal shift is wild as hell. But for someone like me who's kind of I do have wild tonal shifts like that, like in my own work. I just loved it. And I just thought it was so beautiful. Sorry, I could go on about Deep Space Nine forever.
I get it. I mean,
Deep
Space Nine also had a really good balance of episodic and serialized and had to juggle that. So, and Lower Decks has been doing a lot of serialized stuff. And now Mike is saying like next season will be more episodic. Do you have a preference for that?
I think I like episodic because I think it keeps the stories like self-contained and bouncy and they kind of just get to like solve their little problem of the week. I just love a goofy little alien of the week problem that has a little bit of like hidden pathos and lots of fun and funny. I didn't know, this is an unpopular maybe opinion, but like I don't think this season was all that serialized. So I don't draw a huge distinction between what they did in season 4 and what I'm seeing them do in season 5. I think it's all great. I loved season 4. Season 5 is shaping up to be Great. I'll let you know when I read the rest of it. I think it's all great.
Season 4, I think, has been the strongest season so far, and it was great from the get-go. So,
yeah, I just think like we've earned so much of the audience's trust now, and the audience just knows our characters so well that we can do a whole episode where they're just telling stories about being trapped in a cave. I think that's beautiful.
That was one of my all-time favorites.
It was so good. Just cave stories, and them yelling at Tendi. They're like, "That's not a cave story. That's a turbo lift."
So in the season finale, we saw Mariner has gone through this shift, right? So she's not going to self-sabotage. She's going to try not self-sabotaging anymore. And Mike McMahon said, like, the character will be more joyful. Like, are you playing her differently now that you've started recording stuff for season 5?
I am not playing her differently. I am noticing in the writing, though, that she's not just sabotaging for being reckless's sake, or for, she's not just being self-destructive without a purpose anymore. Like, she's having to really grow up and choose the moments where she's going to rebel. I mean, she doesn't suddenly become like a total rule follower. That's just not Mariner. But
no.
But she's got to be a little more judicious about when she's acting out and why, and what the value of that is. There are some moments where I do have to do some different things with my voice, and that is all I will say. That's all I will say. There's some opportunities for a different shade of Mariner that you're going to get in season 5.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's a good time.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad I finally got to meet you.
Me too. Thank you for having me. This has been great. Anytime you want me to come on and talk more about Deep Space Nine, I clearly could go on and on.
Listen, we've got a podcast. We would love that. We would totally, if you can't talk about anything else, we would let you just come on and talk about Deep Space Nine.
Oh, absolutely. You asked me a question about Starfleet Academy I can't answer, and I'm just like, well, the wild thing about Daymar.
Excellent. I hope we get to do that.
Cool.
All right.
You, Laurie.
Thanks so much.
Well, we should definitely take her up on that offer to come on the podcast and talk about Deep Space Nine.
Hell yeah, we should. That would be so much fun. We'll have to pick a really good episode for her to talk about. And something Kira-centric, obviously.
But, that was I mean, you guys had a great rapport. I'm sorry I missed it, but I'm glad you had the opportunity to just have a chat with a Star Trek fan who happens to work on Star Trek.
Be writing Star Trek and acting in Star Trek. Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't, I hadn't thought of it until she talked about that, but that notion that, yes, as you guys went in the back and forth, there have been some people who've acted in Star Trek who got writing credits, like, Brent Spiner had a writing credit in Nemesis, and Koenig and all that. But
yeah, and Picardo got one somewhere. There are a few here and there.
Yeah, but she's literally in the writer's room on the staff. That's a whole different thing. And she is genuinely moved by that. And I think that's pretty cool.
I think she's a creative force. So I think we're going to see her doing all kinds of cool things as her career progresses.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple cryptic things in there. Like, she talked about a live action show she was on that everyone thought was going to be huge, but wasn't.
Do you think that's Space Force?
It's got to be. It really, because I remember when that show was announced and Netflix was paying Steve Carell a huge amount of money because The Office was the biggest thing on Netflix, and then Netflix lost The Office, right? And so they paid Steve Carell a ton of money to do a new show, and it was going to be a huge show. So I could see why everyone thought it, but I remember watching it thinking that it just wasn't that funny.
Yeah, I kind of faded out of it.
Yeah. I think they did 2 seasons, actually. But
and then that was it.
Yeah. It was intriguing, her talking about season 5. She says there's like a different voice she uses for Mariner, so maybe there's like another version of Mariner.
I know, I was wondering, I was like, could it be Mirror Universe Mariner, or some other like weird old obvious. Mariner we've already seen?
Yeah, so there's something interesting happening. I mean, not that that's a surprise, but they are recording, so they it's going to be tight getting that show into 2024, but I think they'll do it.
I was sad to hear that they don't get to record together. In my mind, I mean, I get what she was saying, that it would just take forever, And I'm sure it would take forever. They'd be in there all day. But I do. And then, I mean, the show feels like they're recording together. But I hope at some point they get to do some stuff together just to see what comes from that. It's always what I picture in my head. Is
What's
them
interesting,
gathered in some room.
they did some of that apparently for season 1, and then they stopped because of the pandemic. So they could do it again, and they're choosing not to. So
they're like, we got to go home at some point. So,
but I think it would be fun. I mean, God, get all 4 of them in there.
Yeah, and film it. There's just something fun to be had there. All right, so let's wrap up with our bits of the week. Tony, why don't you start?
Well, mine, I mean, it's almost everyone knows what this exists, so I'm not telling anyone something. But Red Letter Media, I'm a big fan of those guys, Mike and the whole team, and they have this great video show, and their epic Star Trek movie reviews are famous, and their struggle through Discovery and some of the new shows have also been fun to watch. They are huge Star Trek fans. They do all sorts of pop culture stuff. Recently, they got their hands on the destroyed Enterprise D model, the real thing, and they put out this video of them like how building a display for it, and it's just really fun to have them talk about their real fandom. I'm just a big fan of these guys. I mean, Laurie, do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I know of them, but I've never really sat down and.
I mean, their YouTube stuff has millions of views, I think. I mean, they are immensely popular. They do not need us to promote them. But if you haven't seen it, there's a video out there which we'll link in the show note called "Displaying Our Exploded USS Enterprise D," and it's just a fun video, and it's a fun channel. I don't agree with everything they say. I agree with a lot of what they say. It's interesting to look at their reviews of Picard. They had some interesting stuff to say on that. Anyway, what's your bit of the week?
Well, I've been collaborating with the team doing TrekTalks, and TrekMovie is a big part of this year. So I don't know if you've seen the past few years. It's an annual giant fundraiser, like an all-day marathon of Star Trek panels with people from in front of the camera, behind the camera, all kinds of Star Trek people. John Billingsley is the main driving force who starts it up, but it's Trek Geeks, Roddenberry Podcasts, and TrekMovie now added. And I've been working with them a lot on this. And we have a date. So Saturday, January 13th, the event will stream on YouTube. It's all to benefit Hollywood Food Coalition, which is a really incredible organization that pretty much epitomizes the values of Star Trek. And I think that's the big connection that we're making this year, is like, this is really what Star Trek is all about. And we started booking guests and coming up with panels, and I can't give you all of the confirmed names, but I can give you one, and it rhymes with Monathan Cakes. And here's another hint.
Red alert! Energize! Shields up!
So Jonathan Frakes is involved. He's bringing some friends, is all I have to say. There will be some more people. We're going to start releasing announcements about who's joining and maybe what some of the panels will be. The Sci-Fi Sisters are also very much involved in this. So it's like a great collaboration of Star Trek people, Hollywood Food Coalition, and us. And I'm really excited about it. It's going to be great. I got involved because I loved the previous shows.
Yeah, it's a great. It's kind of like a convention in a weird way. A great set of panels, great cause, and Billingsley is the Jerry Lewis telethon guy throughout all of them. He keeps on popping up to the whole thing
with Bonnie Gordon, who's the voice on Star Trek Prodigy of the computer. So the two of them are like the hosts. You can get all kinds of updates at TrekTalks.net. Been working a lot with John lately, and I love that man. He's wonderful. It's full of surprises, that guy.
Indeed. So that's it. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving and happy December. We will have more podcasts in 2023 and into 2024 as we wait for Discovery.
Did you bring your Picard wine to Thanksgiving?
I did.
Same.
It was good. It was not great, but pretty good.
Yeah, mine was a hit. Bottle was empty pretty quickly.
All right. Thanks for listening.
See you next week.